You people can watch while I'm scrubbing these floors, and I'm scrubbing the floors while you're gawking.
In gathering people for the panel discussion, I reached out to Lacey Hudson. Even though she's 94 years of age, she will tell you she's 49, and that, somehow, the numbers have been changed to protect the young at heart.
So what is your maiden name?
Hill.
Hill.
That was my granddaddy, John Hill. He was born in 1849.
Really?
So, in slavery, he was a boy would have to transport the water for the slave to drink. And he went out to carry some water, and he saw a log, and he sat out on the log. The log began to move. It's one of them huge snakes.
Oh, wow.
That he sat out on.
With a skull on.
I was born in Medoc. When I was 14 years old, my daddy moved Helen and worked on the phone. We worked on Jack Simmons' phone. I worked for one we called Racer, Miss Racer. Me and my mama would walk to Ben Hayden and wash their clothes, hang them on the line for 50 cents. We had to walk 3 miles and then back home for 50 cents. Wow. That store down there, Durrance store, that old building in Medoc. That's where my grandmother got killed there. During the First World War, the soldiers had come home. Mm-hmm. And she left church and went to the store to buy her a can of some sardines. And she was on the porch eating, and he was showing the people how to shoot in the wall. Mm-hmm. And the gun went off and killed her.
Staring out the window.
Back then, but when I was growing up, we had to do what the white man said do, or else. Mm-hmm. You come in the back door, and you go out the back door. Mm-hmm. Is this what you want me to talk about?
Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. Now, you were born in what, 1917?
1917.
So you grew up in the era of Jim Crow.
Right.
What was that like for you? What do you remember about it?
Jim Crow was something like this. I did maid work all of my life. All I did was clean somebody's house. And you would go and knock at the back door, go in the back door, clean the house up. You could eat, but you couldn't sit to the table and eat. You would go out on the porch and eat, on the back porch. And you could go and sweep the front porch off, go back in the house, but when you get ready to leave, you had to leave out the back door.
Wow.
And they only paid you 50 cents a day. Helen Lumber Company had a sawmill down there, and I worked there at the hotel washing dishes for $1 a week. Well, $1 was, you had $1, you had a lot of money.
Right. So you've seen the world change. Have you seen it change for the better, do you think, or are you still concerned about the route that...
I think they're trying to carry us back to where we come from.
Did you see a lot of that when you were coming up?
I sure did. I remember when working for John Strickland down here in Helen, they had a daughter, and she had got married and left here. You had to always call them Miss this and Mr. that. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a child, too, me and my sister would walk along the road, and one of her sons and another white boy, if they was on one side of the road, you better get on the other side. Hmm. And they said, well, I think it's going to rain because I see 2 dark clouds rising. They would pick it up. They rode the school bus, and you had to walk. And if you didn't get further from the road, it rolled up on a dirt road. They be throwing things at you out the window. So I asked Miss Strickland, I said, Miss Strickland, what happened to Helene? She said, Lacey, Helene is a full-grown woman now. She's married. That meant for me to say Miss Helene. I said she should be full-grown because her and my baby sister played together, and my baby sister, she grown and married. I let her know I know what she's trying to say. When they got a certain age, you had to call them Miss and Mister.
The whole civil rights thing was going on around Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the whole thing.
I was in some of that.
You were in some of that.
Mhm.
How do you mean?
Every time, remember Martin Luther King come to Tallahassee and had a meeting, I was right there.
Really?
Uh-huh. Free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. I even bought me a book.
So this is a book called Free at Last by E.E. Cleveland. I've never seen this before. Now, when did you get this?
I bought it when Martin Luther King was coming to Tallahassee, having his rallies, him and Reverend C.K. Steele.
C.K. Steele, yeah.
I would go to all their meetings. When they said they were going to hold a civil rights meeting, I would go, and I'd go and stay with my sister-in-law and catch the bus and then go down what they call the city barn to pick my husband up, to go with my husband. And at that time, I wasn't driving. I rode the city bus, and I was expecting my third child. No, my fourth child. And no, it wasn't. It was the fifth child. I get it straight to record.
That's okay.
It was the fifth child. And I got on the bus, and it wasn't no room for me to sit down. And I had to stand up for a white man to sit down, and I'm expecting. Some A&M students got on the bus, and they were going to make them go to the back of the bus. And they decided they won't go into the back of the bus. And they didn't go. They took that bus driver, they beat him up, put him out the bus. They got off the bus, and they ain't never know who done it.
So the FAMU students got on the bus and beat the bus driver up.
The bus, and they left the bus. No, they didn't get it. They didn't ever find out who done. Wouldn't nobody tell them.
Wow.
So I tell you a joke I played on one. And see, you had a certain place that you could go in McCroy's dime store, because you wasn't allowed to go over there where they was eating at, because the black people wasn't allowed to eat there. And so I went there to buy me a pair of stockings, I believe, and some shoes. And I was going to write a check. And writing a check, then you had to tell what color you was. And she said, "What's your name?" I said, "Lacey Hudson." "And how old are you?" "Well, what race are you?" I said, "I'm a dark-skinned white lady." And I didn't laugh or anything, and I didn't change it. And she asked me what color I was, no more sense, what race I was, a dark-skinned white lady.
When Barack Obama became president, what was running through your mind after all the things you've seen?
When he became president, I was so happy I didn't know what to do. And you know, I'm still praying to the Lord that he would give him the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, the courage to do what need to be done and deliver him from his enemies. Those that trying to stop him, ask the Lord that don't let them stop him. Be with him like he was with Moses. He took care of Moses, and I want him to take care of Barack Obama. My first husband got killed in an automobile accident in '39. And the company he worked for, they wouldn't give me the money he had worked and made, and then give me another dime. Wow. And didn't pay for him being killed in an automobile accident. He was on the way to work about 5:30 in the morning, had a car wreck, threw him off and broke his neck. That was Joseph Franklin. That was my first husband.
So what is it like to live all these years and see so many people go before you? What does that feel like for you?
Well, I feel like that practically all my friends are leaving me and left me behind. And I said, and somebody always calling me, asking me about something. And I said, "Thank you, Jesus. This is what you keeping me here for, is to give somebody some information."
That's exactly right.
There's so many friends, and my friends going on, I don't have them to call no more. But I tell you what I do have. I have my great-granddaddy's tax receipt where he paid his tax, which was 100 acres for, I think it was $5 and something. If you want to see that.
I would love to see it.
saw a program on PBS about the turpentine mills, and that African Americans would be arrested for basically trumped up charges and given larger sentences that were warranted in order to be able to sell their labor into these turpentine camps. It was a program that was called Another Form of Slavery. And I was really interested, knowing that turpentine was a major industry here in Wakulla County, if any of y'all were aware of the predominance of that may or may not have been here in Wakulla County. And this was supposedly to have taken place from anywhere from 1907 all the way up to 1967. So it was quite a few years that this activity was going on.
I worked in Turpentine. You had to work through the week to get that 10 time to the place where you need to go. Now my daddy, he practically that's all he done all his life. But it was real rough. Most of the times, you didn't draw any money. I mean, you didn't get any money. You just work. At the end of the year, you might sell up, and you'd be X number of dollars in debt. Then that's to keep you on there for the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And sometimes the blacks would get tired of it, and sometimes they run away. And that would probably sometimes would be one of those Emmett Till situations. And as I said, my daddy, he worked on it practically all his life. And it was real rough.
As Joe was saying, the only time that those people who worked in the turpentine had any time off was on Saturday and Saturday night. And what would happen, there was a lot of moonshine being run. People get drunk on Saturday night, and then the sheriff catch them. If you told them you were working for Mr. Tabb, they turn you loose. Or call Mr. Tabb. Yeah, the time said turn him loose, and then you were stuck. You were stuck then, because if your fine was $50 and you weren't making but $20 a week or whatever we were supposed to pay you, then you were stuck for that much longer that you had to work there. You still owe me. At the end of the year, you settle up and you're still in debt. It was a form of servitude, a form of slavery.
Because the whole system was designed to keep you there.
That is exactly what it was designed for.
No matter what.
That's right. And that's the thing I'm talking about. See, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about what has happened, what used to happen. What is more important is what are we going to do about it? These little children here, they should have a better opportunity. We should have a better understanding, a better dialogue with everybody.
I brought my son here today because I said, you need to hear this and you need to be aware of this because this is our history too. You know, when I talked to her the first time I was on the phone, I said, I'm sure you don't have a lot of middle-aged white women calling you wanting to know about black history. I said, but it's my history too. My father's from South Choppy. I'm 5th generation Wakulla. And my family were perpetrators. We were the ones that were making those rules and enforcing those rules. And I think that a lot of white people are ashamed to look at that. We only, you don't speak ill of the dead. You don't want to go back and say, well, my grandpa, he was a real racist. But I remember stories about Leaf, who my family adored, but he ate on a tin plate out in the backyard. He never came in the house. So there was always that division. But when the time came in my life where I met a woman who was from Africa, she was from Zimbabwe, and she and I became very, very close friends. When I started hearing racial remarks, you weren't just talking about somebody. You were talking about my best friend. And that gave me a whole nother look at what was being said. I mean, we have children in our family now that are biracial. And we're starting to see where there is, I think, a burgeoning think it's the right word, of people who are willing to look and talk about this and start going in different directions. But I think as a community, we have to call for it, we have to demand it, and we have to not stop in demanding it until it happens.
What I'm seeing and feeling now in the state of Florida, in the state of Texas, and I don't know how many other states throughout the country, is that we are maybe producing more enslaved people, and we are teaching others to be more like slave owners in the percentage of people of color that we are putting in jail for oftentimes minor offenses. Sounds very similar to getting drunk on a Saturday night and never getting out of debt. And I think while it's very important to be working with our young kids, we cannot forget the generations that are being incarcerated now. Something has to be done about that.
I'd like to make an addendum. I have been working with a group of people in Tallahassee and discussing a book entitled The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. And the suppression is still there, especially among people of color and especially blacks. I don't know how bad it is in McCulloch County or the numbers for Florida, but I do know that across the country, 1/3 of our black men are in prison. And when they come out, they're felons and they cannot vote. They cannot serve on a jury. They cannot participate in public housing. And they have difficulties getting a job.
Right.
So that's the system that's oppressing. I'm not sure what we do about it, but I think we need to keep the dialogue going, and I think it needs to be a multiracial approach to talking about it. I grew up with white privilege, and although my father stayed on the campus at what was then Florida A&M College in 1944 and 45, he was a strange white man to those blacks who were there. But we shouldn't be strange to each other. We live in our separate communities. We go to our separate churches. Somehow we have to have a time and a place where we can start dealing with everyday issues together. I don't know the answer, but I think I've got the general idea.
The first step in corrective action is for each individual to correct themselves. How do I feel about this situation, whatever the situation might be? Just back in 1952, I was in Officer Candidate School, and there was some 230 officer candidates in my class, and there was only 2 blacks. My mama had convinced me that you are as good as anybody. And my commitment to her was, if anybody else get a bar, I'll get mine. You have got to get yourself prepared for whatever the situation is. The corrective action is going to start with me. And it's going to start with you, and going to start with you, and you, and you, and each one of us. Once we get ourselves on the right track, then we can go from there. But until that, there's always going to be this festering sore under there that only death is going to correct.
Jacob Price.
Carnesia Franklin.
We're in South Choppy, Florida, Buckhorn, and we here at May Day.
What does May 20th mean to you?
Means that we were freed. I don't know.
You're still learning about it, right? I just want to get your first and your last name.
Porter, Leon Porter.
Leon Porter.
Mm-hmm.
And you are out here for the May 20th event. Can you tell me what it means for you to be out here today?
Well, when I was a child, we had only 2 holidays, Christmas and 20th of May. We would meet out here mostly with a picnic like thing, picnic like thing, and they'd be out here, and people would come back with had moved away, they always would get their vacation time enough to come back on the 20th of May. Man, it was a great time we used to have out here. I tried for a long time to try to keep it together, because I used to go around and get people to donate money toward getting their meats. And we would finish the vegetables and stuff, all the other stuff. All we did. So I would get a couple cases of chicken and a couple cases of ribs, and I would barbecue it myself. Yeah. But it was very special to my nose. I'm glad y'all taking it over, because it had about died down. Mm-hmm.
So you're glad about this day, huh?
Yeah, I am, because y'all keep it going.
All right.
Keep it going.
So can I get your first and your last name?
Retired Sergeant Major Jarvis Rozier, Sr.
And where are you originally from, Mr. Rozier?
I'm originally from Tallahassee, born and raised in Tallahassee, but all my roots are right here in Sopchoppy and Buckhorn. My father was born and raised here, went to school here. One of my older brothers went to school here. So when we were growing up, we were members of Mount Trial Primitive Baptist Church here. I was raised up. I was converted here, was baptized here. So, back in those days, we were traveling in that station wagon. So we were here 4 or 5 times out of the week, so we might as well have been growing up here there.
So you've done a number of May 20th celebrations throughout your time, correct?
Well, I've been involved with a few of late. I'm just retiring from the military, so I'm just getting back here. And growing up, I was involved with a lot of them. And recently, when I came back, I joined the John G. Riley House Museum of African American History as the United States Colored Troop Educational Project Director. Okay. So that's what got me involved with the reenactment and the Civil War history of African Americans' involvement in the Civil War.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, what I talked about today was the somewhat from slavery to emancipation is a speech that I give sometime. This is some of the excerpts from it, talking about the African Americans' plight and our plight to freedom, which led up to the Emancipation Proclamation. And it's just important for a lot of people to know that we had just as much to do with our freedom as anyone else, because African Americans fought during the Union, for the Union, as United States Colored Troops, or what they were called then. And with their addition to the Union forces after the Emancipation Proclamation, led to an escalation of the end of the war and leading up to the America owning up to what they promised with the Emancipation Proclamation. As we all know, if we look into it, all the slaves during that time, that didn't come into the 13th Amendment later on in 1865, which freed slaves in all states. But the Emancipation Proclamation was an important document because it started something of freedom for all, and it's got us where we are now.
What does it mean for you to be here today to celebrate emancipation?
It means a great deal. It means a great deal to all of us, because a lot of us, it's sad to say that we don't take our history as important as we should. And it's good to see all the children here today, too, because they're getting some history that a lot of adults are getting for the first time, too. A lot of time when I talk about African Americans during the Civil War era and our involvement, the abolitionists as well as the soldiers, I get a jaw-dropping experience. And when I say, people just say, wow, I didn't know. Well, I didn't know until I started researching and doing the history. And it's just important that everybody now is taking an interest into it. Not everybody, but we're trying to get more people to it. And then events like this, which is great, with everybody coming out and enjoying and having a good time, but also getting a part of history that's very important to all of us.
It brings back so many fond memories when we were all going to segregated schools here in the county, and we used to do the maypole, and everybody would come out. It is such a family spirit-filled event that just was interwoven with your education. You understood the spirit of emancipation by getting also an education. That's what reminds me of the most, those fond memories of going around the maypole, doing all the skits, eating the fried fish and chicken, and people looking at their roots with respect to their experiences. It just really, it's a wonderful experience for me.
You guys had skits?
We had skits. Every class had to put on a skit. And matter of factly, my class, when I was in the 4th grade, we had to have skipping involved in our skit. And I was the last kid in the class to learn how to skip. And I didn't do it to the 11th hour, and they put me on the end, so they were like, you've got to learn how to skip. And so I can skip to this day if you'd like to see it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Now you get ready to run for office, and we'll talk about this sometime a little bit later on.
Yes, sir.
But what is that like for you so far?
I'm running for the office of Superintendent of Schools. It fits right nicely with my career. I've been a lifelong educator. I'm a professional educator. I've trained principals. I've worked for school districts, worked for DOE. Currently, right now, as a principal of a high school in Havana, East Gaston. I'm excited about having the opportunity to expand this school district and go from good to great and make Wakulla County Schools stand for world-class system. And so I'm excited about it, get to meet a lot of voters, and let's hope my message resonates, that people will look at qualifications more so than pigmentation. And I'm excited about it.
Thomas Dickens.
Okay. And tell me what brings you out here to our May 20th celebration today.
Well, I'm good friends with Dr. Randy Nelson, who I know is a deacon here, and he invited me down and said, we're going to talk some good history and learn a lot, and so that's why I came on down.
So what do you think about the festivities so far?
Love it,
Enjoy it?
love it, yeah, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into that barbecue over there. That's going to be
running
delicious,
the corner,
yeah.
right? Now, you say you're on your way back to Tallahassee in a little bit because you have these fatigues on.
So I'm a JAG in the U.S. Army Reserve, and we have a number of soldiers that are going to be deploying to Afghanistan. Actually, the whole unit, the 160th MPs out of Tallahassee, they're going to be deploying to Afghanistan in 2 weeks, I believe it is. And so I'm going up there. I got to give them a brief today.
Give me your first and your last name.
Dominic Rollins.
So tell me, Mr. Rollins, what is it like to be out here during the May 20th celebration?
Well, just to understand the history of how the May Day got started, having people to come out and actually honor what we're trying to do, not just as a church or just as a organization, coming together and understanding that not just food and music, but fellowshipping. That's the main thing that we like to get out of May Day.
So how are the youth responding to the actual idea of May 20th? Do they get it? They get the concept?
Well, you have some that don't know what it is. That's why they come, and once they understand, they see the games and the fun. But to know why we do it, then they pass it on, then more will come out on the next year.
Give me your first and your last name.
Vera Harvey, your first cousin.
There's not nepotism on this radio program, ladies
Yes,
and
it is.
gentlemen. Tell me what May 20th means to you.
Well, we used to celebrate May the 20th every year because we were always told that was the day that we was freed from slaves and we need to celebrate it. I always try to participate in things to let the younger generation know where they come from. And that means a great deal to me. I do it at my church, and my pastor and I do it together, and we do it as our old-fashioned day, our Black History Month.
What did you do today? You gave us something of a presentation. Can you give me an idea of what that all was that you were doing?
Yesteryear, some of the things that we grew up with, like the going to the outhouse and pumping water, washing dishes, and ironing our clothes from a smoothing iron and washing our clothes with a tub and a rub bowl and taking a bath in a foot tub. Letting the younger generation know that they didn't always have it as easy as they have it now.
Right.
Oh, Jim Crow, don't you know it's all over now?
Thank you for listening to the Wakulla Sunday radio program. Our Strike the Match campaign continues. For every dollar you donate to support our program, Wave 94 will match that amount so that we may bring you more episodes of the people, history, and culture of the wonderful world of Wakulla. No donation is too great or too small. If you'd like to know more, please contact Doug Apple at 850-926-8000. Again, that number is 850-926-8000. And while you're at it, visit us on Facebook, keyword Wakulla Sunday. Thank you to our editor, Chuck, the Wakulla County Christian Coalition for their sponsorship, as well as the Greater Mount Trial Primitive Baptist Church. Join us again Sundays at 5 p.m., Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m., the Wakulla Sunday radio program, right here on Wave 94.1.
Oh, Jim Crow.